going to say in year two, obviously it's not year two of the franchise, but it's year two of this franchise as we know it right now with Stroud and Ryans.
Well, I think that this is a team that can be in the conference championship game in late January. I don't think anybody doubts that they have that type of ability because they have the quarterback, right? And that's half the battle. I do love what the Texans as an organization went out and did. They fortified that defense like no other, right? They've invested heavily in that defense with 2 top 5 picks and Will Anderson Jr. and Derek Stingley. Derek Stingley showed up with the first pick on Daniel Jones in their preseason game from Saturday, but then also going out there and getting Danielle Hunter, a pass rusher from the Minnesota Vikings. I think that's going to be huge in terms of being able to close out games, right? Because this is...
Okay, so that's what I really wanted to talk about. I think it's a great point. And I think it's an overlooked point, even by myself, quite honestly, because, right, we're such like an offensively driven fan base. Like in general, I don't mean just like Houston Texans fans. I just mean in general now. Because offense, right? Offense is exciting. The NFL knows that. That's why the rules have changed to increase offense. Majority of the stars are offense. It's offense, 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 right? But defense is obviously, of course, important. And that is the head coach's specialty, right? Like that is what he was ultimately hired to do, was to lock down that defense as well as create a new culture and be a leader. And now you add someone like CJ Stroud, you add a great young offensive coordinator, and it's kind of this perfect marriage. So yeah, they fortified that defense and they fortified the offense. Somehow they didn't have to choose. A lot of times, sometimes it feels like you have to pick and choose, like, what are you going to work on and grow, improve in the offseason, your team. Like, you have to kind of maybe go a little bit more defensive heavy or a little bit more offensive heavy, because sometimes if you kind of spread it too much, and you kind of spread too thin and you don't get measurably better on either side of the ball. Sure, you improve, but just not enough for it to really matter. The Texans somehow seem to have been able to fortify both sides of the ball. They have this great young ascending quarterback in CJ Stroud, and they were like, yeah, let's give him extra weapons. Let's give him more weapons. Let's give him experienced weapons. It's like, okay, well, that's great. Oh, and let's also, we got our head coach who's only, his second year, D'Amico. Like, yeah. Let's, he knows defense. He's been doing great with defense. Let's give him also more pieces and weapons to now do even more damage defensively. And it's just like, it's kind of, it's perfection, honestly, right? It's like what they've been able to pull off is just, you can't do anything but just give them a round of applause. And so it's incredibly impressive. And this is what we often see these great young ascending teams, or teams that remain to be great at the top, whether it be the Kansas City Chiefs, whether it be the 49ers, the Eagles, whatever it is. They make moves that you're just like, those were great moves. Like, that's genius. How did they pull it off? Now, of course, the Texans are in the earlier stage, where now if they actually really pull this off, they get to the AFC Championship game, they win, they get to the Super Bowl, whatever it may be, you will look back and be like, this was brilliance by the front office. Brilliance. And so that's exciting. That's really exciting, because your team does start and end, honestly, with the front office. If the front office doesn't know what they're doing, then you might get lucky, you might get a great team, but it's not going to last very long. And so it's an unpopular opinion, maybe, just how important the people who are kind of really making those personnel decisions, who are writing the checks, like, at the end of the day, if they don't know what they're doing, your team's not going to go in a positive direction. Just think of all the great teams, either in the past or even present. They are all highly run franchises. It's just impossible for it not to be, right? It's just the way it goes. So that's exciting. And I really believe that the Texans will be able to, prove everyone right in terms of how great they can be. Because I think most people are not doubting them, as Chris Candy said. Like, I think for the most part, there is a lot of belief. I think you have some hate versus the Texans, and people are trying to act like, oh, Diggs is going to be a problem, or CJ Stroud, they didn't have film on him. What about this year? And it's like, I don't even want to give too much oxygen to that, because it's like I really think that that's the vast majority. I do think there's been a tremendous amount of buzz around Jordan Love and the Packers, and quite frankly, rightfully so, from my viewpoint, and some of these other teams, of course, obviously the Chiefs. And I do think as of late, there has been more of like a settling of the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans in the beginning of the offseason won the offseason with their trades, getting Diggs and all that in the draft. Like, people were super high on the Texans, and I felt like there was a tremendous amount of buzz. Now, not so much. There's definitely less buzz. So there is that belief still, but it's just not talked about as much. I have not seen a lot of Houston Texans clips as of late. That's just been my experience. And I was like, I want to do a video on the Houston Texans. Like, I got to go hunting for this right now. And that's why that's how I really honestly came across this clip. But I think what's, under talked about, which I said at the top of the clip, was with the defense. And it's not so much that they're always going to be able to play with the lead with CJ Stroud, which is obviously great. Don't get me wrong. And I think that's all part of it. But when you're trying to be a complete team, the Houston Texans are trying to build themselves to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, to beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, to beat the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. Like in order for the Houston Texans to win a Super Bowl, to reach the Super Bowl, they have to go through elite quarterbacks. You need a top defense. And it's not that you're going to completely neutralize the Patrick Mahomeses of the world, but you can at least try to slow them down a little bit, ever so slightly. Because if you're just going to try to just go all out in a duel, Patrick Mahomes will most likely win that more often than not. You're going up with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. That is just a tough thing to follow. Look at what happened with the Eagles versus the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. It's just, you just can't. You're going to need more from your defense, which is tough. But that's how Patrick Mahomes even won against, say, the Ravens and won against the Bills. Because at that time, the Chiefs weren't able to win a shootout, really. But their defense stepped up. But it's just not, but that to me was definitely more of an outlier. Maybe that trend continues for the Chiefs, which would be really interesting, because if it does, then I think they would be in serious trouble against teams like the Texans this year. I think they would be in serious trouble. I don't believe it's necessarily going to continue like that, but honestly, who knows? Who knows? But I think this defense, they're trying to build it in the mind of like, we're going to have to slow down Patrick Mahomes. We can't let Patrick Mahomes put up 30. We can't let Lamar Jackson put up 30, but it can't happen, right? We can't give up 4 touchdowns. We gotta make it uncomfortable. We gotta be able to force some 3 and outs. We gotta get better field position for our offense, for CJ Stroud, for these weapons. We gotta dominate time of possession. We gotta keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, sitting there staring off into space as he often does, chewing on his mouthpiece. That's what someone like the team like the Houston Texans need to do, and I think that's what they're ultimately trying to do. Not to mention, obviously, the head coach for the Texans knows very intimately what Patrick Mahomes can do at the biggest stage, in a Super Bowl. And so he knows what it takes to stop him, what it takes to stop these top quarterbacks. So I think that is going to have a major impact on the Texans, in a positive, of course. And I think when you kind of lock down the defense for the Texans, it'll also make it significantly easier for CJ Stroud, and it'll give the Texans more of a place to also spread the ball around, because there's just going to be less pressure. They're probably going to have more often than not drives. I don't want to say where they can have some fun, but it's not going to be like, we just got to get a first down here, right? Because sometimes when your defense isn't locked and loaded, the feeling is like, we just got to get a first down here. We just got to move the chains. We just got to put up points. You just start to get a little bit more contracted. When your defense is taking care of business, the offense now can have some room to have a little bit more fun, right? The offense is a little bit more imaginative than, say, defense. Defense is a lot more physical than, say, offense. And considering the Texans do have a lot of mouths to feed and do have a lot to go on, well, then you want to be able to do that. That's what keeps the energy high. That's what keeps everyone happy. You're winning. You're putting up points. It feels good. It's that energy. Again, it's very reminiscent to me of the 22 Eagles. That's what they were able to have. That defense took care of business. The offense had plenty of mouths to feed. They fed them. Everybody was happy, rocking and rolling. Jalen Hurts is on his way before he got injured to an MVP. They almost won the Super Bowl. Like, it was there for them. It was definitely there for them. And I think that the Texans should potentially, honestly, should be in a position to be even better. I really do. I think potentially their culture, their youth, and their quarterback could put them in a better situation. And I think also the Chiefs, especially if you have to go through them again, I think all signs point to them being slightly worse than they were a couple years ago. Not tremendously, because you still got Specs, you still got Andy Reid, you still got Patrick Mahomes, but I think there's potential. I think we could see a bigger decline of, say, a Travis Kelce. And it can't be understated how much of a security blanket Travis Kelce has been. And also Travis Kelce aging and maybe not being able to do what he normally can do. I don't think he's going to be a good person to want to be around. We've already seen him kind of slightly coming apart last season. And so I just don't think that when he can't really do what he needs to do, if he's constantly battling injuries, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a great leader in the locker room either. And quite frankly, it's hard to kind of muster that up when you do get to go home and lay in bed and watch a movie with Taylor Swift. I don't even blame him, honestly. Right? I mean, the guy is fed and happy. I mean, like, so it's just different. It's just going to hit differently. You care so much more. This channel means so much to me because it's like the most important thing I have in my life. But yeah, if I was married to Taylor Swift or dating Taylor Swift or whatever, and I was traveling the world and doing all that, I would make a few videos on a regular basis, sure. But if I had to skip a day or two here and there, I would do it. I mean, you know, they talk about that with boxers. Once you're sleeping on silk sheets, it's like really hard to wake up at 3 a.m. and train real hard and to want to get hit in the face. So it's just not entirely clear to me that Travis Kelce will have that same dog in him. And if he does, it would be more in a negative than a positive, like we see him running into Andy Reid on the sidelines and yelling at people on the side and throwing his helmet, whatever. I think we could potentially see more of that this season that a lot of people aren't talking about. And so I think all that bodes well for the Texans. And the reason why I'm even bringing all that up is because the Texans need to set themselves up to be able to minimize their own mistakes and maximize on the mistakes of others. That's exactly what the Chiefs did last year. Even despite some other issues, they still, when it mattered, they did not make mistakes, and they allowed the Bills, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the 49ers to make mistakes, whereas the Chiefs made essentially zero. Minimal. And if they did, they were able to overcome it with top-level elite play. That is what the Texans need to do. The margin of error is only getting shorter and smaller in the NFL. And so when you fortify your offense, when you fortify your defense, when you have the head coach who could tie it all together, you got the great offensive coordinator to conduct and be the conductor of that offense, then the sky is the limit. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think that the Houston Texans have kind of built their team with the mindset of like, we need to get past the Chiefs? Like, we're not just trying to be a great team. Like, we are trying to build a team specifically to beat these teams that have maybe beaten us in the past, like the Ravens, like the Chiefs. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.